Hey everyone, Disaster Area here with another video. This one is the first of its kind, but it will be becoming a theme as time goes on, where I'm presenting a bit of analysis of data from ADV 50 tournaments down in the future. These will be done after each season's complete, and there will be even more data for those, hopefully bigger tournaments, but also 3 tournaments constituting a season. This is simply one. So the main takeaway really from this is also sort of showing what's possible, and I've not done all of the analysis I plan to do with this either. There's going to be more stuff coming, mostly Pokemon specific stuff, and building tendency reports as well, which I would also like to potentially show off. But yeah, with this one, we had an off-season tournament. The first one using our SQL capabilities, our database capabilities, which basically means that after their sets, players give me the exact teams that they used. And through that, we can do all sorts of clever analysis of the sorts that you might not have seen done before for other tournaments. Starting though with some more ordinary stuff, we have the usage statistics and for Pokemon both in terms of regular play and as leads. And there's definitely some interesting takeaways already in this. First of all is the fact that all 50 Pokemon were used is not a bad sign at all. Although 3 of these Pokemon, Banette, Manectric, and Gramble, we intend to replace after this tournament. They could, of course, be kept if people vote to keep any of them. But you can see Banette there with only a single use. I'll go into sort of that. Well, if you want to know more about that, message me. But since the fact that Manectric's usage is actually on the higher end here at 13%, is sort of a function of the fact that the reason why we think the Manectric's not actually that viable. I mean, it's not like completely useless, but it's not that viable anymore. Is a realization that actually Electrode effectively outclasses it, although it's a bit weaker, being both faster, bulkier, and having a much better move pool. Just a way too much to look past. So Manectric really is frail. You have to put 4 EVs into special defense so that it's not one-hit KO'd by Golduck's unboosted Hydro Pump, which is just crazy. Electrode lives that with spikes without investment, which is, I guess that's the difference, and we do need to sort of change our mindsets and see, oh, actually Electrode is a good Pokemon. Because it is. It's been moved to B rank now. But yes, sort of some of the stuff I'd like to bring attention to is this is like our first ever statistical gathering on this tier. First of all, just like in terms of the individual usage, comparing this to other tiers, there's no Pokemon above 40% usage. In OU, Tyranitar's around 70%, and you have like 4 or 5 Pokemon that are usually around about where Fortress and Muck are appearing here. Normally you'll have like Zapdos, Skarmory, Swampert, Metagross, Blissey, or whatever. Something like those 5, maybe Jirachi instead of Blissey or something. I'm not sure. It depends a bit on the tournament, but I've got data from across like the Kalos Invitational, SPL, and so on, conglomerated all of that, and that's sort of what the usage was looking at there. So first of all thing is that this tier is really not very centralized. Speaking about why those Pokemon that are at the top, Fortress is the tier's primary spiker. Inevitably, especially in the tier with only 2 spikers, that bumps its usage up pretty high. We'll see sort of what the spikes usage is like overall, but there's a Glalie, which if you can see is hovering around 10%, is the other user, which you'll see on some offensive builds, but like all balance and stall if they're using spikes, as well as some offenses will use Fortress. It's not suitable on every team. You wouldn't use it on a weather team for various reasons necessarily. But other than that, it kind of fits on everything, which is why its usage is pretty high. It's just like, do you want spikes or not? Which, yeah, I mean, there's some styles as well. Baton Pass and Belly Drum based teams likely won't use spikes either. But yeah, that's why Fortress's usage is so high as well as sort of being like an S rank Pokemon because it's the tier's premier spiker, and no matter how much the tier adapts to it, and trust me, it's adapted to it, it's still an excellent Pokemon. Muck as well is it's a function of it being splashable more than it being like super powerful. Like again, outside of weather teams, it fits on almost any archetype. There is more competition with it. I mean, it's the best special wall in it here. But there's some stuff that you can use more specialized walls that beat those Pokemon better. Like Lantern, which is the third highest Pokemon, is the tier's best response to Golduck. Muck is a Golduck check, but normally you need a secondary check like a Meganium or a Golduck Riviron or something alongside it as well to function. Plus, it's also a fairly easy Pokemon to wall, not for forever, which is part of what makes it a great Pokemon in battle, is that long term it's very potent, and also on offense you can use moves like Focus Punch and Explosion to make it quite a potent lure. So I mean, yeah, it's just a really great Pokemon. But you're seeing that like splashability is like really huge here as well. And yeah, Lantern, as I said, the high usage is really just because it's such a good Golduck answer that you use it on Rain, and you can use it on any like balanced all offense to a degree to check other Lantern, to check Golduck, to check Rain. It's the thing that really holds Rain back from being a great archetype at the moment. It's just has an absolutely horrid time against Lantern, which is really common at the moment. Golduck, the other S rank that you're seeing there, is quite a bit lower usage than Florian and Muck, and I would say that it is still pretty splashable. It unlike those two, actually, it does fit on Rain and Sun, but you won't. Its defensive niche is not big for like balance and stall teams. Like offense will usually run Golduck because its ability to like nullify weather, and it's just high threat level and like bulky water features, like being an Altaria check, stuff like that are pretty huge for offense. But on like balance and stall teams, you can usually do better defensively than Golduck. And if that's like not where your win condition is coming from, like if you use like a Crawdon team, you're not going to be able to fit a Golduck. That Pokemon needs specific support that doesn't really jive with Golduck. It doesn't need paralysis support. Then yeah, like the prominence of like balance and stall teams, balance teams in particular, you'll see, but also like yeah, stall teams rarely using it. Impacts its usage, even though even if like the win percentage might not say it, it's one of the, if not the scariest Pokemon in the metagame. But yeah, what we really see here is that it's less about is this Pokemon really good, more about how splashable they are as to what's coming up high in the usage, because ADV 50 is proving to be pretty multipolar. Like there's so many different styles which have like different Pokemon that they love to use or might use or don't use at all. The stuff that can fit with a lot of Pokemon's kind of high usage and stuff that's just like really good. There's also, of course, other influences on this data. A lot of players are using sample teams, for example, so that might weigh things one way or the other more. Plenty of people did build as well, but yeah, that's one thing. People using things because they're fun versus whether they think they're the most viable, like, might to a degree explain like the heavy use of Drum Fable. Although Clefable itself's usage is high and justifiably so. It's a great and very flexible Pokemon, but like the Fearow usage maybe is more of a function of that. It only really fits on like teams abusing Subpass, and it's not even the only good Subpasser at all. You can use it with Clefable, and there's a sample with that some people really liked. I think it's a fun team, and I've also got like an offense that uses it with like Golduck and Kadabra and stuff. But yeah, surprisingly high usage there. Yeah, there's definitely been like metagame developments throughout this tournament as well, which might explain why certain Pokemon are like lower than like they might seem. Like Lanoon's like ranked as A-, but it's really only been as the tournament ended that we began to really appreciate just how good this Pokemon is. It needs support. It does need support. You need like Subpass or memento or like screens. There's a few ways of doing it, but you need to support it to get off a drum. But if you get a drum off with it, then it's almost unstoppable. It's a really crazy Pokemon. There are soft checks to it, but against almost every team, I'd say if it sets up at least one Pokemon as fainting, even against a fully healthy team, it's like the likelihood. Or bar like maybe if you put like 20% chip on every Pokemon, then yeah, it could very well be sweeping. So yeah, it's a very potent Pokemon, which is something I sort of want to come on to like later as well, with like the prominence of Drum in the tier. It's something that it seems pretty unique to ADV 50, but yeah, I could kind of like talk about like these stats for a while because it's sort of go into like the details of like what's going on with these Pokemon. As well, I wanted to point out like the leads statistics. I've not really talked about that yet, but that's also on this on the slide on the right. First thing I'd note is that there's really not something like super standing out. Like the top lead, Muck, is used in less than 1 in 8 games, which is just it's really small. It shows that you can't really expect any particular lead necessarily, but there's different like classifications of leads I'd sort of put in here. First of all is the spikers, which are the second and third most prominent. I don't think that Fortress is great as a lead. I think lately, if you're using it, it should be a lead, and that's like largely what we're seeing is like Foray as a lead is only about 25% of them, whereas almost every Glalie was used as a lead when it was used at all. But yeah, they feature very highly just because they have spikes, and then like most other leads are built around denying one or both of them spikes. So Muck always carries Fire Blast. You might see offensive Muck with Focus Punch that can one-hit KO Glalies. Fire types are common. You can see Rapidash with 8%, but also Torkoal at about 5%, Flareon at 4%, Typhlosion at 3%, and Camerupt as well at 1%. So there's the number of fire types, which both Fortress and Glalie are weak to fire, so those are like your most natural choices. There's also Golduck, which outspeeds both and is strong and massively threatening. You can't really afford to give free turns to it. You got Sleep leads. There's mostly Venomoth, but Rapidash can be as well with Hypnosis, which was used sometimes, but not super often. But that's generally sort of the theme of leads. And Aggron as well can run. It's got Taunt to prevent Furrow from spiking and Rock Slide. So Oko, Glalie. The Golem, the 5 uses of Golem as a lead was this is how like it goes a bit sometimes when you've got like a single tournament that's like not super huge and some people don't know the meta too well. Was Murkit versus Turjo, I think it was a round 1 matchup that went to 5 games. Murkit brought one team that he built in every single game, and on it he chose to lead with Golem. This reasoning is sort of one to start off with the possibility of like an explosion. It's sort of like comparing it to Choice by Metagross, which is like an interesting comparison. But the way the lead metagame works out, I mean, it's fine versus Foray and Muck, but most other things it just kind of has to run from. It's fine against like Aggron. It's not the worst lead in the world. It's not the worst idea in the world at all. And since then, he changed to Tauros lead, which has also got its ups and downs. But yeah, that's one person influencing the usage stats there, whether they sort of, obviously they didn't really intend to, it's just how things ended up panning out. But it's a good reminder that all of these like stats are sort of a function of people's individual decisions, and also that some people can have like a bigger influence than others. Nonetheless, I'd say it's still pretty interesting. I think that like the relative like unpredictability of like the leads is, I mean, I think that's interesting. I think some people put more weight on leads than I do. I think because I'm naturally quite a balanced Stawlia even player, I tend to think less about the lead matchup, more as like I want to achieve, or I want to prevent certain things, but other than that, it's just we're playing Pokemon. I don't mind exactly how things start out, whereas like other players are, especially like more offensively minded players, will be thinking about like how do I get the advantage on turn 1 and carry that through the whole game. Yeah, but yeah, I think that the overall distribution, the way that like three Pokemon are above 30% usage overall, the the very flat lead usage as well, sort of highlight how this metagame is really multipolar, and this data should sort of like reinforce that as well. I hope to a degree. Although I think looking at the individual Pokemon usage as well also shows that, but in a different way. So on here, we've got quite a few statistics. Can look at the charts first. They have like less information, but it's a lot more visually appealing and easier to look at than tables. So I'm going to try and use like charts a bit more, but with tables, I can also include like the win percentage and stuff as well, which I don't think is the most useful thing, but I think it's people like seeing it. I don't see the problem in it. I do think that there is sometimes like really interesting things you can sort of take from it as well. But just looking at the charts, first thing, pretty straightforward one is the spikes usage is about 50-50, whether there's spikes or not, which is interesting to me that it ended up so close to 50-50 rather than like one way or the other. I like spikes. There's a lot of good ways of playing without them in the tier as well, and I think like this shows that it's really not forced to run it, but they are good. They are spikes. The archetype split is interesting because there's like different things that go into that beyond just what's actually the best thing in the meta. Like I think, like for example, like Jump Bluff Stall, I think is actually like a really powerful style. I've got a team with like physically defensive Torkoal, Jump Bluff, Fortress Lantern, Silcarmine Mistravis, and Spadef Whiscash, which is it's a bit of a funny team. It's very much like a disaster area team, whereas like other teams that I've built have been a bit more like targeted at just like building like standards around certain ideas, like paralysis balance with like Sandslash, or like off-eds with Taurus and Kadabra, like those kind of things. This is like very much a me personal team that if somebody else made the meta, that's the sort of thing I'd come up with and play. And I think that that's pretty strong, but at the same time, I've seen other players use it who don't grok Pokemon in the same way that I do. And you know, most people I think are like that, and they struggle because Jump Bluff's a pretty delicate Pokemon that you can fuck up with pretty easily. So there's not just that. I think there's also like what's in the samples. In this tour, a lot of people playing with the samples. B, what's easy to build, and then like C, personal preference. Like a lot of players might like offense. Players tend not to like Storm. You're sort of seeing that. The one other thing as well that sort of goes into those statistics a bit to be aware of is like the classification, of course, like stall, balance, offense. You're like, well, how do I do that? And the actual answer is not sadly very pretty. I may pull up the code actually just to show the magic a bit. But if but basically, sort of what I'd say is that it's never going to misdiagnose stall as offense and vice versa. But in the gray area between balance and stall, balance and offense, it'll fairly often choose like what the human wouldn't necessarily. Obviously, those are like pretty gray areas in general. But yeah, sort of like briefly show what's going on in SQL, the team archetypes view, and sort of see I've got like an offense value generated from like this flags view, and then yeah, if you don't understand SQL code, then I'd say don't worry about it. I'll also pull up the team flags view itself. You can sort of see what's going on there. It's like an offense score as well. This basically how I did it, was assigning an offense score from 0 to 1 for individual Pokemon in a certain way, mostly based on like their EVs and then some other stuff, and then there's like specific adjustments for specific Pokemon that for whatever reason have like really weird investment. Like Martina has like really particular investment that it needs to do its job, and it looks really funky, and it's like I need to tell SQL that this is what it's supposed to do with it. Is actually supposed to treat it as like a stall Pokemon, so you can see using the move IDs to pull through, is this Pokemon have like spikes? Does it have spin? Does it have reflect? And so on. Like there's and then like that's the actual offense value, like calculation. Just like a little bit of behind the scenes. And this I'll say is definitely something that can use some work. It's not my priority at the moment to review this. It's sort of probably like after everything is working and when I've got some more time on my hands, whenever that might be, which might not be for like months and months when I've sort of like got the time to go back onto problems like this. But yeah, there's that's how it's done. It's not human selected. It's using some code that I sort of like tested with real teams and sort of what did it say to the point where it was getting stuff mostly right. Or at least right enough that I was happy with. So yeah, that's that's how the archetype split works. In terms of like the specialized stuff, you can see there, most stuff's not particularly specialized, but there are a lot of like different like specific things that we see. Also, like address the non-mutual exclusivity of it, which is something that Earthworm brought up briefly when I showed him the charts. It's just like, yes, a team could technically be like a Boom team and a Sun team. And to be fair, like Boom and Sun do go together quite well. But first of all, there is sort of like a prioritization, like the stuff that's like really clear. Like if it's a drum team, it's got a belly drummer, and that's how it is. And like certain things are prioritized, and it's really hard for a team to be more than one of these as well. But like the more generic stuff, like the paralysis abuse, bad and pass, boom, like those ones are like lower priorities. In terms of like the stuff that might somehow like be both, and like boom teams require 3 explosion users and so on. So there's standards there. There's technically teams can be both, but it's not common for that to happen. And yeah, only about like 40% of teams are one of these specialized styles. Some stuff would like to bring attention to though. I did sort of mention it earlier as the high usage of drum teams, which I think there's both it's really fun aspect of it, because like when do you get a metagame where like there's more than one good drum user? Like GCAU had a time like way back when like Drumlax was the thing. And even then like Drum Fable and Drum Zaya was still like pretty niche and always have been, probably always will be in GSC. Like in later generations, like you almost never see drum. There's outside of singles in XY doubles, of course, there was bunnies or bunny rampages, like the RMT is known as, which I think was just like an awesome team move. Just briefly, the concept is like belly drum or Azumarill paired with a transform Mew, and then there's obviously like support options around that and like generally good doubles Pokemon like Lando T in there as well. It was like an XY doubles team. But yeah, it's really rare that you see belly drum being like a really potent strategy. And in this tier, for various reasons, it is. Lanoon, because of like E-speed and the fact you can go like adamant and still outspeed every normal resist. It's a violent one, but it's offering like no defensive utility. It's just a sweeper. Whereas like Drum Fable has got like soft walls, so it can keep on trucking. You can't like wear it down very easily unless you toxic it. Obviously it's like a bit weaker, but it's like bulkier, so it's not as hard to set up. Plenty of stuff doesn't to hit KO Clefable and so on. And it has like actual defensive utility, like it's a really good Kadabra check, for example. So it's yeah, they both require like building like in different ways, but the tiers like got good enough like glue in it and so on that you can afford to more or less sacrifice a slot defensively for a drum user and still have a good team. So that's what's going on with drum. I think people just like also like love playing with drum. I love playing with drum. I think it's really cool that like, you can have these teams based around like these crazy sweepers. There's like Lanoon and Clefable, just like these crazy Pokemon, and how do you set that up reliably and so on. And it's hit a nice balance, I think, where you can and you reasonably often will see drum users sweeping games, but it's far from a foregone conclusion. You don't really see dittos between drum teams. I've not seen one yet. I'm sure it will happen at some point with the way we're going, but yeah, it's an option that's out there. One thing that like when I was discussing this with a friend who doesn't really play ADV 50, but he's like aware of it, and he was wondering like why is offense's win rate so low? Like is it like a bit over 40%? And there is like a good answer to that when you look at like, the specialized archetypes. You've also got like the full archetype, which is like the archetype and the specialized bit pushed together, as well as like spikes or spikeless. Like all of that information you can see there. You can see like spikes balance at about 20% usage and 50-50 win rate. But what you'll notice when you look at sun and rain, which are almost always offense, sun has no wins and rain only has a single one. So between them, they're probably what's like really dragging down offense in general. You can see bad and pass offense if you look into the full archetype bit is has like a really good win rate. Spike's offense is doing pretty well, and so on. Other styles are doing okay. Yeah, so the reasons why sun and rain don't have high win rates, I'd argue that both styles are really hard to pilot at the moment. With rain, it's just a brutally bad matchup against Lantern, which is only so much you can do about it. You can have explosions, spikes. Recently, I've been like trying like raw Nidoqueen and Thief and Stravis. There's cool techs you can try, but it really has a hard time against Lantern. And like also like Golduck being like so popular and good just also is not great for weather teams. For Sun, I feel like it's hard to pilot as well. Like there are more hard counters, but they're rarer, and you do have tools to break them or to like ignore them. Like Vileplume's got Sleep Powder, Shiftry's got Explosion, but I think Shiftry's just such a hard Pokemon to use. Like it's when you look at its stats, you're not like, oh, this is so frail. But in practice, it just is so frail. It's so frail. It's just, and then like the fact you need Sun Up to use your Grass Stab, so otherwise you're left with like HP Fire and Explosion. It's just the fact you need to set up for it to even be threatening, and then even then, like so many things wall it, and like Explosion is like forecastable, and there's like a lot of Protect in the tier because every Pokemon can recover HP with Protect in the tier without Sand or Hail. In the first place, and secondly because it's good in the weather matchups, and it also makes stuff like Shiftry's Explosion just even harder to make use of. Plus, like when you're stacking like two grass types that aren't like super great defensively, then all of a sudden you've got a tough task like fitting all the resists you need. So I mean, those Sun is fun, and it's definitely got a lot of potential to be threatening and to be like really dangerous. And I think that in both like Sun and Rain, there's still a lot more to be explored, and maybe we need somebody who's like a really good pilot of one or both of the styles like to really show the way. But that's why those are like got such low win rates at the moment. Like this is like, I think on archetypes it's more interesting to look at like the win rates like individual Pokemon. Like when you look at a Pokemon with like a low win rate, it's like, how do you associate like that Pokemon's low win rate with like how good that Pokemon really is? Because if it's like high usage and its win rate's at 40%, like it's got high usage for a reason. Like Golduck might not have like an above 50% win rate, but its ability to absolutely steamroll teams is unbelievable. It's got so much defensive utility for a Pokemon that you can fit really easily on offense. Unbelievable. It fits well with Subpath. It fits well on Sun. Like, probably the low Sun usage is actually like a part of why its win rate's not so great. Or the low Sun win rate and the fact that you see Golduck on Sun. But when you look at the archetypes, like, well, why does this style have like such a low win rate? And then that's when you can like really sort of put your skills as a Pokemon player to the test, like understanding that data and like learning from it and being like, what do I need to change if I'm going to run this archetype and win with it? Or is it just bad luck? Like, I don't know, Drum has like a 43% win rate, but maybe it's luck or maybe it's just like hard to pull off consistently. Who knows? I mean, and even styles that are doing well, like, yeah, I'm not sure where I was going with that, but yeah, I think that this is like just really interesting data. The other thing that's remaining, this is something that Kara requested, so I did include it in the data. I'm probably not gonna like go too much into this, but she was interested in seeing like what pairings have like really high win rates. And I'll just go into like the one interesting thing I sort of want to add with like the ranking of this was 'cause, like if you wanted to just go by win percentage, there was like 16 pairings that had like 100% win rate, but some of them had only been like used once or twice. So I wanted to filter that out, but I didn't want to just go by like usage as well either. So it was actually the wins over the square root of the usage. So more usage bumps up the rank, more wins bumps up the rank. And that's like generally like how it goes. Like a high win rate is more impressive if it was used more. Is the idea? Is why like Kadabra and Taurus together having like 8 wins in 9 usage is just like incredible. It was like Furo Lantern, but like some of these pairings are like probably team specifics. Like Furo and Lantern, there's like specific subpass teams. There's a Drum. I can't remember if the Drum Fable team uses that pair or not, but like it'll be like a function of those teams using that pairing rather than that pairing being really good. I feel like where it was like Taurus and Kadabra, that pairing is being used because they have offensive synergy. They're both fast, powerful Pokemon. Both are checked by Aggron, for example. So they pair well together. And something to be said from that, like Crobat and Fortress as well being high together is interesting. Basically suggesting that Crobat with spikes is really good, which is not something I can disagree with. But yeah, I don't know. If there's anything sort of here that you find like really interesting to discuss, please leave a comment down below, like and subscribe as well. If you want to keep your awesome knowledge to yourself as the seasons come up and, you know, whatever, feel free to as well. Would love to see people destroy me in the seasons. I want to, at least for a while, not be the best player of this tier, but right now I still think that's comfortably the case. But players are getting better. I want you to join and beat me. Come and do it. I dare you. I dare you. You can do it. Prove yourself. So yeah, that's really all I wanted to go into. Showing off like the data, discussing it a bit, and you're saying like, you know, there's gonna be more of this, especially after the season. You imagine like that data with like 3 or 4 times worth like the data going into it. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be a good time. So that's all from me. Much love to. How did I say that? Yeah, I've got to sign off now. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave your comments down below. Bye bye.